The emergency board meeting ran late, as they always did when quarterly numbers disappointed investors. Elena Morrison sat at the head of the marble conference table, her expression carved from ice as she listened to excuses disguised as explanations. Outside the 42nd floor windows, the city glittered like scattered diamonds, beautiful and cold, much like the woman who commanded this room. At 38, Elena had built Morrison Technologies from a garage startup into a billion-dollar enterprise in artificial intelligence and robotics. She had done alone after her husband's death 6 years ago, raising their daughter Mia while simultaneously building an empire. The tech world called her brilliant. Her competitors called her ruthless. Her employees simply called her the Ice Queen, though never to her face. "We'll revisit these projections in 2 weeks," Elena said, her voice cutting through the room's nervous energy like a scalpel. "I expect concrete solutions, not abstract theories." Dismissed. The executives filed out quickly, relieved to escape. Only her assistant, Priya, remained, tablet in hand, already preparing for the next crisis. "Mia's still in the building," Priya said quietly. "Security said she's in the employee lounge on 12. Again, Elena's jaw tightened imperceptibly. Her 10-year-old daughter had developed a habit of wandering the building after school, exploring corridors and befriending staff members Elena barely noticed. The nanny had mentioned it becoming a pattern, but Elena had dismissed it as harmless curiosity. Now, at 9:30 at night, with the building mostly empty, that dismissal felt like negligence. "I'll get her," Elena said, gathering her files with practiced efficiency. "Reschedule tomorrow's 8 o'clock to 9. I need to talk to her about boundaries." The elevator descended in silence, each floor marked by a soft chime. Elena studied her reflection in the polished steel doors, designer suit showing no wrinkles despite 14 hours of wear, hair pulled back in a flawless twist, makeup still perfect. She looked like success incarnate. She looked nothing like a mother who had forgotten, once again, that her daughter existed beyond scheduled time blocks. The employee lounge on the 12th floor was dark except for the glow from the vending machines. Elena pushed through the door, prepared to deliver a firm lecture about staying where she was supposed to be. But the room was empty, chairs pushed neatly against tables, everything in its place. "Mia," Elena's voice echoed in the silence. No answer. Elena felt the first stirrings of real concern. The building was secure, certainly, but it was also massive, with hundreds of rooms, storage areas, mechanical spaces. A 10-year-old could be anywhere. She pulled out her phone, calling security. "This is Morrison. I need eyes on my daughter. Check all cameras on floors 10 through 15. Now." As she waited for the callback, Elena walked the corridor, her heels clicking against tile. She passed empty cubicles, darkened conference rooms, the abandoned reception desk. Then she heard it, a faint sound, barely audible. Music, maybe, or was it singing? Elena followed the sound to a stairwell door she'd never noticed before, marked maintenance access, authorized personnel only. The singing was clearer now, a man's voice, soft and melodic, carrying a tune she didn't recognize. And beneath it, impossibly, her daughter's laughter. Elena pushed through the door and descended 2 flights of concrete stairs, following the sound to a sub-basement level she'd forgotten existed. The corridor here was utilitarian. Exposed pipes, industrial lighting, the smell of cleaning supplies. At the end of the hall, a door stood ajar, warm light spilling out. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. Elena approached silently, years of negotiation training making her footsteps soundless. Through the gap in the door, she could see into what appeared to be a makeshift classroom. The concrete walls were covered in hand-drawn posters, the alphabet in bright colors, numbers with corresponding pictures, simple words with illustrations. A battered desk held stacks of donated textbooks, their spines cracked from use. And in the center of the room, sitting on mismatched chairs around a folding table, were 7 children. 7 children she did not recognize, wearing clothes that had been washed too many times, their backpacks patched with duct tape. They were focused on workbooks spread before them, pencils moving carefully across pages, and standing at a makeshift whiteboard, marker in hand, explaining a math problem with infinite patience, was a man in a janitor's uniform. His name tag read Marcus Webb. Elena knew him only as the quiet man who emptied trash bins and mopped floors after hours. She had passed him countless times without truly seeing him, without wondering about his story or his life beyond the building. But here, in this forgotten basement room, Marcus Webb was transformed. He moved between the children with gentle authority, correcting a math problem here, praising good work there, his voice warm and encouraging. One of the children, a girl of perhaps 8 with thick glasses, struggled with multiplication. Marcus knelt beside her chair, pointing to the problem, breaking it down into smaller pieces until understanding lit her face like sunrise. "There you go, Rosa," he said, his voice carrying genuine pride. "See? You had it in you all along. You just needed to trust yourself." And then Elena saw Mia. Her daughter sat at the end of the table, not separated from the other children, but part of them. She was helping a younger boy with his reading, sounding out words with him, celebrating each small victory with enthusiasm Elena rarely saw at home. "That's perfect, David," Mia exclaimed. "You're getting so good at this." The boy beamed, a gap-toothed smile of pure joy. He couldn't have been more than 6, his shirt 2 sizes too big, his shoes held together with careful stitching. Marcus glanced at the clock on the wall, a donation bin find that ticked loudly in the quiet moments. "All right, everyone, let's pack up for tonight. Remember what we learned about fractions. Tomorrow we'll practice with real-world examples. I'm thinking pizza slices." The children laughed, gathering their materials with practiced efficiency. Marcus moved to each one, checking their backpacks, making sure they had their homework, sometimes slipping a granola bar or juice box in when he thought they weren't looking. Elena stood frozen, watching this impossible scene unfold. Her building, her company, her janitor running an unlicensed, unauthorized school for children who clearly had nowhere else to go, and her daughter, glowing with happiness Elena hadn't seen in months. "Mr. Marcus," Mia said as the other children prepared to leave, "can I help you clean up?" "You've already helped so much tonight, sweetheart," Marcus replied, stacking textbooks with careful hands. His fingers were calloused, Elena noticed, scarred from years of hard work. "Your mom's probably wondering where you are." "She's in a meeting," Mia said with the casual certainty of a child who knew her mother's schedule better than her mother knew her daughter's life. "She won't be done for another hour at least." Marcus's expression flickered with something Elena couldn't quite read. Sympathy, perhaps. Understanding. "Even so, you should head up. I don't want her worried." One by one, the children left, each one thanking Marcus, some hugging him goodbye. Elena stepped back into the shadows of the corridor, letting them pass without seeing her. They were quiet, well-behaved, their faces showing the exhaustion of children who carried burdens too heavy for their small shoulders. When the last child had gone, Elena stepped into the doorway. Marcus was wiping down the whiteboard, his back to her, humming the same tune she'd heard from upstairs. Mia was organizing books on a makeshift shelf, completely at ease in this underground classroom. "Mom!" Mia spun around, eyes wide with surprise and something else. "Fear, perhaps. I didn't know you were done with your meeting." Marcus turned slowly, marker still in hand. His face went carefully blank, the expression of someone who had learned to expect the worst from people in power. He was perhaps 50, Elena estimated, with silver threading through his dark hair and lines around his eyes that spoke of both laughter and hardship. "Ms. Morrison," he said quietly, setting down the marker. "I can explain." Elena's mind raced through a dozen responses. Anger at the unauthorized use of company space. Concern about liability. Questions about permits and background checks. But what came out of her mouth surprised even her. "How long has this been happening?" 6 months, Marcus answered, meeting her gaze directly. No apology in his voice, just statement of fact. "Every weeknight, 7 to 9:30. Just an hour and a half. These kids, they don't have anywhere else to go after school. Parents working double shifts, some in shelters, some with family situations that make homework impossible. I thought if they just had somewhere quiet, somewhere safe, with someone who cared. They're not enrolled in my company's youth programs, Elena interrupted, her CEO voice returning. We have proper facilities for community outreach, licensed teachers, insurance, legal oversight. Those programs have waiting lists, Marcus said gently. Some of these kids have been on those lists for 2 years. They can't wait 2 more years to learn how to read. And you're qualified to teach them? Elena heard the edge in her own voice, the skepticism she couldn't quite suppress. Something flickered across Marcus's face. Pain, maybe, or old anger, long since buried. I was a teacher, 22 years in public schools. Lost my position when the district cut funding. That was 3 years ago. The revelation hung in the air between them. A teacher reduced to cleaning floors. A professional relegated to emptying trash bins because budget lines mattered more than children's futures. Mom, Mia's voice cut through the tension, small but determined. Mr. Marcus is really good. He helped me understand fractions when I was stuck. And he helps all these kids who have nowhere else to go. Please don't fire him. Elena looked at her daughter, really looked at her. Mia's hair was coming loose from its braids, her school uniform rumpled. But her eyes held a light Elena hadn't seen since before her father died. Conviction, purpose, connection to something beyond her privileged, isolated world. These children, Elena said slowly, turning back to Marcus. Where do they come from? Everywhere, Marcus replied. Rosa's family is staying at the Mission Street shelter while her mother looks for work. David's grandmother watches 6 kids in a 1-bedroom apartment. Maria's parents clean offices downtown, don't get home until midnight. They're all just trying to survive, Ms. Morrison. Education shouldn't be a luxury only some children can afford. Elena felt something uncomfortable stirring in her chest. Guilt, perhaps, or recognition of a truth she'd been avoiding. She had built an empire on innovation and efficiency, had convinced herself that success justified any personal sacrifice. But standing in this makeshift classroom, watching her janitor pack up donated textbooks while her daughter looked at her with pleading eyes, Elena wondered what she had actually built. This can't continue as is, she said finally. There are regulations, safety concerns, liability issues. Mia's face crumpled. Marcus just nodded, acceptance in the set of his shoulders. I understand, ma'am. I'll clear out my materials tonight. I didn't say you had to stop, Elena heard herself say. The words surprised her, but once spoken, they felt right. I said it can't continue as is. We need to do this properly. Legal oversight, proper space, licensed supervision. Hope flickered across Marcus's face, quickly suppressed. Ms. Morrison, with respect, I've approached every official channel. There's no funding, no political will, no. I'm not talking about official channels, Elena interrupted. I'm talking about Morrison Technologies establishing an after-hours learning center. Properly funded, properly staffed. But I need to understand what you've been doing here. I need to see it work. She pulled out her phone, making a decision that felt both reckless and necessary. Priya, clear my schedule for tomorrow evening, 6 to 9:30, and give me the contact information for every child who's been participating in unauthorized educational activities in Subbasement 2. Marcus and Mia exchanged glances, hope and disbelief mixing on their faces. You're serious? Marcus asked, voice rough with emotion he couldn't quite hide. I'm always serious, Mr. Webb, Elena replied, slipping her phone back into her pocket. Tomorrow night, I'll observe your teaching. If what I see convinces me these children are genuinely benefiting, we'll discuss how to make this legitimate and sustainable. She looked at her daughter. Mia, it's time to go home. We need to talk about communication and following rules. But Mom, no arguments. Thank you for showing me this, but there are proper ways to handle things. Elena softened her tone slightly. We'll figure this out. Together. As they walked back through the corridor, up the stairs, toward the elevator and Elena's waiting car, Mia slipped her small hand into her mother's. It had been months since she'd done that voluntarily. Mr. Marcus is a good person, Mia said quietly. He sees people other people don't see. Like you don't see him, usually. The observation stung, precisely because it was true. Elena had built her empire by focusing on what mattered: innovation, efficiency, profit margins. She had convinced herself that success would create opportunities for others through economic growth and job creation. But she had never stopped to look at the janitor mopping her floors, to wonder about his story or recognize his dignity. They rode home in silence, but it wasn't the distant, disconnected silence that usually filled the car. This was contemplative silence, heavy with possibility and questions neither quite knew how to ask. That night, after Mia was asleep, Elena sat in her home office, laptop open, staring at the screen without really seeing it. She had spent the last 3 hours researching educational gaps, funding shortfalls, the army of invisible people keeping cities running while their own children fell through systemic cracks. Marcus Webb's name appeared on her employee roster. Hired 3 years ago, perfect attendance, 0 complaints, efficiency ratings in the 97th percentile. But nowhere in his file did it mention he'd been a teacher. Nowhere did it note his credentials, his dedication, his decision to spend his evenings teaching children no one else had time to help. She had reduced him to a function, the person who emptied her trash and mopped her floors. She had never wondered about his dreams, his losses, his quiet revolution happening in her building's forgotten spaces. Elena pulled up the employee handbook, scanning policies about space usage, liability, after-hours activities. Everything Marcus had done was technically against regulations. She could terminate him with cause, clear out his classroom, return to the careful order of her corporate world. But she thought about Mia's face glowing with purpose. She thought about the little boy with a gap-toothed smile celebrating his reading victory. She thought about Rosa struggling with multiplication until someone took the time to break it down into pieces she could understand. And she thought about what it meant to see people, really see them, beyond their functions and roles and the narrow spaces she had assigned them in her carefully ordered world. Elena picked up her phone and typed a message to her head of corporate social responsibility. Schedule meeting first thing tomorrow. Need to discuss creating new community education initiative. This is priority 1. Then she opened a new browser tab and began searching for everything she could find about Marcus Webb, the teacher who refused to stop teaching, even after the world decided his services were no longer required. Outside her window, the city continued its endless rhythm. Millions of invisible people moving through their invisible lives, seen only when they failed to perform their designated functions. But tomorrow, Elena thought, tomorrow she would begin learning to look past the surfaces, to see the humans behind the roles, to understand that sometimes the greatest expertise came not from resumes and credentials, but from stubborn compassion and the refusal to let children fail simply because the system had failed them first. Marcus Webb, she suspected, had lessons to teach that had nothing to do with math or reading. Lessons about dignity and purpose and what it meant to be truly human in a world that constantly reduced people to their economic utility. Tomorrow, Elena would start learning. And perhaps, in the process, her daughter would learn that her mother was capable of growth, capable of seeing, capable of becoming more than the ice queen who commanded boardrooms, but had forgotten how to command her own humanity. Some discoveries happened in dramatic moments. Gunshots in malls, crises revealing hidden truths. Others unfolded quietly, in forgotten basement classrooms where invisible people performed miracles no one thought to notice. Elena Morrison had spent 6 years building an empire. Tomorrow, she would begin learning what it meant to build something that actually mattered. The next morning, Elena arrived at Morrison Technologies an hour earlier than usual. The sun was still low on the horizon, casting long shadows across the parking garage. She had barely slept, her mind circling back to that basement classroom, to Marcus Webb's careful hands organizing donated textbooks, to her daughter's face glowing with purpose. Priya met her at the elevator with coffee and a tablet full of overnight reports. I cleared your evening schedule, as requested. Also, HR sent over Marcus Webb's complete employment file, and I took the liberty of pulling his teaching credentials from a state database. Elena took the tablet, scanning the information as they rode to her office. Marcus had taught middle school mathematics for 16 years, then elementary education for 6 more. His performance reviews were exceptional. Multiple Teacher of the Year nominations. A master's degree in education from a state university he'd attended while working full-time. Then, 3 years ago, his position was eliminated in district-wide budget cuts. 57 teachers let go in a single afternoon. He applied for 43 teaching positions over the following year, Priya noted. Got 3 interviews. No offers. Age discrimination, most likely, though no one says that outright. Cheaper to hire recent graduates. Elena felt that uncomfortable sensation again, the one that had kept her awake. She existed in a world of abstractions, quarterly reports, market projections, algorithm efficiency. But Marcus Webb's story was concrete, a dedicated professional discarded by a system that valued cost savings over experience. And instead of becoming bitter, he had found 7 children who needed him and continued teaching anyway. Schedule a meeting with him for this afternoon, Elena said. My office, not HR. Make it clear he's not in trouble. And give me the names and contact information for those children's families. I want permission to observe tonight. Already done, Priya replied, a hint of approval in her usually neutral tone. 6 of the 7 families responded positively this morning. The 7th is still deciding. They're wary of anyone official taking interest. Elena understood that wariness. To families living on the margins, official interest usually meant problems. Social services investigations, truancy citations, complications in already complicated lives. Trust would have to be earned, not demanded. Marcus arrived at 2 o'clock, still wearing his janitor's uniform. Elena had specifically asked him to come during his shift, not wanting him to feel this was a formal disciplinary meeting. He stood in her office doorway, taking in the floor-to-ceiling windows, the minimalist furniture, the awards lining one wall. His expression remained neutral, but Elena caught the slight tension in his shoulders. Please sit, she said, gesturing to the chairs by her desk rather than the formal conference table. Can I get you anything? Coffee, water? I'm fine, thank you. Marcus sat carefully, as if worried about leaving marks on the expensive upholstery. Ms. Morrison, about last night. I want to understand what you've built, Elena interrupted gently. Not shut down. I meant what I said about observing tonight. But first, I need to know more. Marcus studied her for a long moment, as if trying to determine whether this was genuine interest or corporate trap. Finally, he nodded. What do you want to know? Start with how it began. Marcus leaned back slightly, his eyes growing distant with memory. About 8 months after I started here, I was cleaning the food court on a Friday evening. There was a little girl, maybe 7, sitting alone at a table doing homework. No adult in sight. Building was supposed to be clear by 7, but there she was, writing numbers in a beaten-up notebook. His voice was steady, but Elena heard the emotion beneath it. I asked where her mother was. She said her mom cleaned offices on the 16th floor, wouldn't be done until 9. The girl couldn't go home alone. Too dangerous, Mom said. Couldn't stay in the office. Security would kick her out. So she hid in the food court every night, trying to do homework alone. Elena found herself leaning forward, drawn into the story. Rosa, Marcus confirmed. Smart as anything, but struggling with basic math because no one had time to help her. So I sat down. Just for 15 minutes, I told myself. Showed her how to add fractions. The look on her face when she got it right. He paused, something raw crossing his features. That's why I became a teacher. That look, that moment when understanding clicks and a child realizes they're not stupid, not broken, just needed someone to explain it differently. And then others started coming. Word spreads fast among families in similar situations. A few weeks later, Rosa brought David. Then Maria appeared. Then 2 brothers whose father works construction, gone before dawn, back after dark. They all had the same problem. Nowhere safe to be, no one to help with school, falling further behind every day. Marcus met Elena's gaze directly. I know what I did was against regulations. I know I could have come to you, gone through official channels. But Ms. Morrison, with respect, I've dealt with official channels. They promise help in 6 months, a year, 2 years. These kids can't wait that long. Every day they fall behind is a day harder to catch up. The blunt honesty hit Elena harder than any corporate presentation ever had. This wasn't a pitch or a proposal. This was a man who had identified a problem and solved it without permission or recognition, simply because it needed solving. The space you're using, Elena said, it's not ideal. Concrete walls, poor ventilation, no windows. It's better than a parking garage or a building stairwell, which is where some of them were doing homework before. Marcus's tone wasn't offensive, just factual. I know it's not perfect, but perfect wasn't available. Elena pulled up building schematics on her tablet. The 4th floor has a conference wing that rarely gets used in evenings. Better lighting, proper HVAC, furniture designed for sitting and working. Would that work better? Marcus blinked, thrown off balance by the question. That would be yes. But I assumed. You assumed I'd shut you down. Elena set down the tablet. Mr. Webb, I'm not going to lie. What you've done creates liability issues and regulatory complications. But I've spent the last 18 hours researching the problem you're trying to solve, and the gap in services is real. Unconscionable, actually. She stood, moving to the window, overlooking the city. I built this company believing that economic success would create opportunities for everyone. Rising tide lifts all boats and all that. But some people don't have boats, do they? Some people are just trying to keep their heads above water while the tide rises around them. What are you saying, Ms. Morrison? Elena turned back to face him. I'm saying I want to do this right. Legal framework, proper insurance, licensed supervision. But I'm also saying that you've proven this works. These children trust you. Their families trust you. That's not something we can replicate with corporate infrastructure and well-meaning administrators. So, you want me to keep teaching? I want you to design a program that actually serves these families' needs, not what I think they need from my office 42 floors up. Elena sat back down, this time in the chair beside Marcus rather than behind her desk. Tonight I observe. I learn. Then we figure out how to build something sustainable that doesn't lose what makes it effective. For the first time since entering her office, Marcus smiled. Not a polite corporate smile, but something genuine and warm. Your daughter said you were smarter than you looked in the boardroom videos. Elena laughed, surprising herself. Mia said that. She talks about you a lot. Worried that you work too hard, don't sleep enough, eat lunch at your desk instead of taking breaks. Marcus's expression softened. She loves you very much. Wants you to be happy, not just successful. The observation landed like a gentle punch. Elena thought about the distance that had grown between her and Mia over the past few years, the way she'd prioritized deadlines over bedtime stories, board meetings over school events. She had convinced herself that building security for their future justified absence in their present. I haven't been a very good mother lately, Elena said quietly, the admission surprising her. You showed up last night, Marcus replied. That's not nothing. Most parents in your position would have just fired me and moved on. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. That evening, Elena arrived at the 4th floor conference wing at 6:30, half an hour before Marcus's usual start time. She'd had maintenance move the furniture that afternoon, creating a more classroom-like arrangement. Better lighting had been installed. A whiteboard had been mounted. Fresh supplies sat on a new shelving unit. Notebooks, pencils, erasers, rulers. Nothing fancy, but everything functional. Mia appeared at 6:45, her school uniform swapped for jeans and a sweater. Mom, what are you doing here? I told you I'd observe Mr. Marcus's teaching tonight. Remember? Mia's eyes widened as she took in the transformed space. You did this? This is so much better than the basement. Mr. Webb shouldn't have to teach in a storage room. Elena adjusted the angle of a desk, suddenly self-conscious about her choices. Do you think I like it? Are you kidding? Mom, this is amazing. Mia ran to examine the supplies, her enthusiasm uncomplicated and genuine. Can I all set up? Together, mother and daughter arranged the space. Mia knew exactly how Marcus organized materials where students like to sit which children needed extra light for reading. Elena watched her daughter move through the room with confidence and purpose, realizing how little she actually knew about Mia's life outside their home. Marcus arrived at 7 sharp, followed by a stream of children. They stopped in the doorway, staring at the transformed space with wide eyes. "Mr. Marcus, what happened?" Rosa breathed, clutching her backpack straps. "We got an upgrade," Marcus said, his voice carefully neutral. He glanced at Elena, a silent question in his expression. She nodded, giving permission for him to handle this however he thought best. "Ms. Morrison, Mia's mom, she thought we deserved a better learning space. What do you all think?" The children erupted into excited chatter, choosing desks, examining supplies, running their hands over the smooth whiteboard. David, the youngest, approached Elena shyly. "Thank you for the new room," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "It's really nice." Elena knelt to his level, something she couldn't remember doing with anyone other than Mia. "You're welcome, David. Mr. Marcus tells me you're working hard on your reading." David nodded enthusiastically. "I can read a whole page now without help. Mr. Marcus says by next month I'll be ready for chapter books." "That's wonderful." Elena felt an unexpected warmth in her chest. This child's excitement over reading a full page reminded her why education mattered beyond test scores and college admissions. "I'd love to hear you read sometime, if you'd like to share." "Really? Okay." David ran off to join the other children, his earlier shyness forgotten. Marcus began the evening's lesson with a review of the previous night's homework. Elena positioned herself in the back corner, tablet open, but mostly ignored as she watched the dynamics unfold. Marcus moved between students with practiced ease, his teaching style adapted to each child's needs. With Rosa, who was bright but anxious, he offered constant encouragement. With the 2 brothers, Carlos and Miguel, who were energetic and easily distracted, he used humor and movement to keep them engaged. With Maria, who struggled with reading due to an undiagnosed learning disability, he patiently broke down words into phonetic components. And with Mia, who was academically advanced but socially isolated, he gave her opportunities to help others, building her confidence and connection. It was, Elena realized, masterful teaching, not the kind measured by standardized tests or district evaluations, but the kind built on genuine relationship and understanding of each child as an individual. Marcus knew these children, knew their strengths, their struggles, their home situations, their dreams. Halfway through the evening, during a transition between subjects, Marcus approached Elena's corner. "What do you think?" "I think you're wasted emptying my trash bins," Elena said bluntly. "You're a gifted teacher, Mr. Webb." "Marcus, please. We're on the same team here." He glanced back at the children, now working quietly on math problems. These kids, they're all capable of grade-level work or better. They just need consistent support. Rosa could be taking advanced math in 2 years. David's reading comprehension is improving every week. Miguel has a gift for science that's being completely ignored by his overcrowded school. What do they need that they're not getting? Marcus considered the question carefully. Time, individual attention, someone who believes in them. Their schools are understaffed, overwhelmed. Teachers want to help, but have 40 students per class. These kids get lost in the system, then blamed for falling behind. He paused, choosing his next words carefully. "Ms. Morrison, Elena, if you're serious about making this official, it can't become another bureaucratic program that serves administrators more than children. It has to stay personal, flexible, responsive to their actual needs." "Tell me what that looks like." For the next 20 minutes, as children worked independently, Marcus outlined his vision. Small groups, no more than 10 children per instructor. Evening hours to accommodate working parents. Meals provided, because many of these children ate their only full meal at school lunch. Transportation assistance, because getting to programs was often the biggest barrier. And most importantly, instructors who were committed to the children, not just the job. Elena listened, taking notes, asking questions that revealed her business acumen, but also her genuine desire to understand. This wasn't a corporate presentation. It was 2 people trying to solve a problem neither could solve alone. At 8:30, Marcus called for cleanup time. The children packed their materials with practiced efficiency, thanking him as they prepared to leave. Elena noticed that each child who left received not just a goodbye, but a moment of individual attention. Marcus checked on Carlos's injured wrist from playground fall, reminded Maria about her spelling test tomorrow, praised Miguel's improved focus, told Rosa she should be proud of her progress. When the last child had gone except for Mia, who was organizing books on the shelf, Marcus turned to Elena. So, do you still want to move forward? I do, but I need you to be honest with me about something. Elena set down her tablet, meeting his gaze directly. Why did you risk your job to do this? You could have just done your work, gone home, left these children to someone else's problem. Marcus was quiet for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried a weight that suggested old pain. I had a daughter, Samantha. She'd be 24 now if she'd lived. Elena felt her breath catch. I'm sorry. Car accident when she was 16. Drunk driver ran a red light. Marcus's hands gripped the edge of a desk, knuckles widening. Sam wanted to be a teacher like me. Used to help me grade papers, tutor younger students. Said education was how you change the world, one child at a time. He looked up at Elena, and she saw old grief in his eyes, but also purpose. After she died, I couldn't stop teaching. It was the only thing that made sense. When I lost my position, I felt like I'd lost Sam all over again. Like the thing we shared, the thing that honored her memory, was gone. So you found another way, Elena said softly. These kids needed someone. I needed them to need me. Maybe that's selfish, I don't know. But when Rosa finally understands fractions, or David reads a whole page, or Miguel tells me about something cool he learned about stars, for a moment, I feel like Sam's still here. Like the work we both believed in is still happening. The raw honesty of the confession hung between them. Elena thought about her own loss, how she'd channeled grief over her husband's death into building her company. She told herself it was for Mia, providing security for their future. But maybe, like Marcus, she would try to outrun pain by staying constantly in motion. My husband died 6 years ago, Elena heard herself say. Heart attack at 37, completely unexpected. For a long time, I couldn't function. Couldn't think, couldn't plan, could barely get out of bed. Then one day, I realized I had to choose. Let grief consume me, or build something that would give his death meaning. She gestured at the room around them. Morrison Technologies was my grief made productive. Every successful quarter, every innovation, every job created, it all meant his death wasn't just senseless loss. It was transformation, tragedy into purpose. But somewhere along the way, Marcus said gently, you forgot to actually live. Just like I did. Elena nodded, surprised by how easily this man understood what she'd barely admitted to herself. These children, what you've built here, it's real. It's immediate. It's human. And I've spent 6 years building abstractions while forgetting about the real people behind every number on a spreadsheet. Mia approached them, finished with her organizing. She looked between her mother and Marcus, sensing the weight of the conversation even if she didn't fully understand it. Mom, are you going to help Mr. Marcus keep teaching? Elena pulled her daughter close, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. Yes, sweetheart. We're going to build something together that helps children like your friends here. Something that matters. Will you be here more? Not just at the office being busy, but actually here. The question cut deep because Mia asked it with hope rather than resentment. Her daughter still believed Elena was capable of change, capable of choosing presence over productivity. I'll be here, Elena promised. Not every night, but regularly. I want to learn what you and Mr. Marcus have been doing. I want to understand what actually helps. Over the following weeks, a pattern emerged. Elena observed 2 or 3 evenings per week, gradually shifting from distant observer to active participant. She helped children with homework, learned their names and stories, began to see them as individuals rather than problems requiring solutions. Marcus became not just an employee or a program administrator, but a colleague and, increasingly, a friend. They met weekly to discuss the program's development, but conversations frequently drifted beyond logistics into deeper territory. Parenting challenges, grief, fear of failure, hope for redemption. "You're good at this," Marcus told her one evening after the children had left. They were reviewing progress reports he'd written for each student. "The kids trust you. That's not easy to earn." "I had a good teacher," Elena replied, glancing at him. "You show me how to see people, Marcus. Not just functions or problems, but actual human beings with dignity and worth." Something shifted in the air between them. Not romantic, not yet, but an acknowledgement of connection that transcended professional collaboration. Two broken people finding unexpected healing in shared purpose. Mia noticed, of course. Children always noticed. "Mr. Marcus makes you smile," she observed one night as they drove home. "You don't smile like that at work. It's different. Real." Elena couldn't deny it. Marcus's presence had awakened something she thought she'd buried with her husband. The capacity for genuine connection, for vulnerability, for allowing someone to see past the carefully constructed walls of success. But there were complications. The board questioned the expense of the new education initiative. Investors worried about mission drift from core business. And Wallace Trent, Morrison Technology's chief financial officer and Elena's longtime skeptic, made his opposition clear. "This isn't a charity, Elena," Wallace argued during a particularly contentious meeting. "We're a technology company. Education programs should be left to institutions designed for that purpose." "Those institutions are failing," Elena countered. "We have resources. We have space. We have an opportunity to make real impact. We have shareholders who expect returns on investment, not feel-good community programs that drain resources." The tension came to a head when Wallace threatened to take his concerns to the full board, potentially triggering a review of Elena's leadership. Marcus, learning of the conflict through office gossip, appeared in her office late one evening. "You're risking your position for this," he said without preamble. "For the program. For those kids. It's worth the risk. Elena, I can't let you lose your company over 7 children and a janitor with a teaching degree." Elena stood from her desk, moving to face him directly. 8 children now, and you're not just a janitor, Marcus. You're the person who reminded me why any of this matters. Success without purpose is just motion. Money without meaning is just numbers. But your board will come around or won't. But I'm not going back to who I was before. I'm not returning to a life where I know the cost of everything and the value of nothing. Marcus studied her face, something unspoken passing between them. "Your husband would be proud of you. The real you, not the CEO persona. Sam would be proud of you too," Elena replied softly. "The way you honor her memory, the way you keep teaching even when the world said stop. That's love transcending loss. That's legacy." They stood in silence, inches apart, the charged air between them acknowledging feelings neither was quite ready to name. Not yet. Too much grief still carried, too much healing still needed. But the foundation was forming. Trust, respect, shared purpose, and beneath it all, the quiet recognition that 2 broken people were becoming whole together. "We should get home," Marcus said finally, stepping back. "Mia's probably wondering where you are." "She is. But Marcus..." Elena caught his hand briefly. "Thank you for not letting me stay invisible behind my success. Thank you for seeing me," he replied. "For remembering that people matter more than efficiency." As they left the building together, walking through corridors Marcus had once cleaned alone, Elena felt the distance between their worlds shrinking. CEO and janitor. Wealth and struggle. Different lives converging on common ground. The belief that children deserve better, that education was a right, not a privilege, that human dignity transcended economic status. The invisible man had become visible, and the woman who thought she saw everything had learned to actually look. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 2 o'clock. Wallace had gathered enough votes to force a review of the education initiative, framing it as fiscal irresponsibility and mission drift. Elena knew the real target wasn't the program. It was her leadership, her judgment, her decision to value something that couldn't be quantified on a balance sheet. Wednesday evening, she arrived at the 4th-floor classroom to find it empty except for Marcus, who was packing materials into boxes. "What are you doing?" Elena asked, though her sinking stomach already knew. Making this easier for you, Marcus said quietly, not meeting her eyes. If I resign, you can tell the board the program's founder is gone. Gives you an out. You keep your company, and I'll find another way to help these kids. Absolutely not. Elena crossed the room, placing her hand over his to stop the packing. Marcus, you don't sacrifice yourself to save me from a fight I chose. Elena, be realistic. You're risking everything. For something that matters. Her voice cracked with emotion she'd kept carefully controlled for weeks. For children who deserve better. For a man who reminded me what integrity looks like. For the chance to build something that actually changes lives instead of just generates revenue. Marcus finally looked at her, vulnerability raw in his expression. I can't let you lose what you built. Then help me fight for what we're building together. That night, Elena worked until dawn, preparing a presentation that would either save her vision or end her tenure. Not financial projections and efficiency metrics, but stories. Rosa's math scores improving 3 grade levels in 4 months. David reading chapter books. Maria's confidence growing. 8 children whose trajectories had fundamentally changed because one teacher refused to stop teaching. The boardroom fell silent as Elena concluded her presentation. Wallace spoke first, his tone dripping skepticism. Moving stories, Elena. But Morrison Technologies isn't a charity. What's the return on investment? The return, Elena said evenly, is remembering why we exist. Not to accumulate wealth, but to improve lives. These children represent untapped potential our society is wasting. We have resources to change that. The question isn't can we afford to help them. It's can we afford not to. She looked around the table, meeting each board member's eyes. I've spent 6 years building this company at the expense of my daughter, my health, my humanity. I was succeeding at everything except what actually mattered. Marcus Webb, a janitor we paid minimum wage, taught me that the most valuable things can't be measured in quarterly reports. So you're saying, Wallace interrupted, that this is about your personal growth? Your redemption story? No. Mia's voice came from the doorway. Elena turned, shocked to see her daughter standing there with Marcus beside her. It's about my mom finally becoming the person she always should have been. Mia walked to the front of the room, pulling papers from her backpack. These are letters from the families Mr. Marcus helps. From Rosa's mom, who can finally work nights knowing her daughter is safe and learning. From David's grandmother, who cried when he read to her for the first time. From all the parents who were losing hope. She placed the letters on the conference table. My mom used to be too busy for me. Now she helps with homework. She knows my friends' names. She smiles real smiles, not business smiles. Mr. Marcus didn't just help those other kids. He helped us too. The room remained silent. Then Margaret Chun, the board's longest-serving member, spoke. I grew up poor. Single mother, 3 jobs, never home. If someone had helped me the way Marcus helps these children, maybe my mother wouldn't have worked herself to death at 49. She looked at Wallace. Elena's right. Return on investment isn't always monetary. Sometimes it's about becoming a company worth being proud of. The vote was close, but the education initiative survived. Elena's leadership was affirmed, though Wallace resigned in protest. As the board members filed out, Marcus approached Elena, Mia between them. You didn't have to risk everything, he said softly. Yes, I did, because some things are worth fighting for. Elena looked at her daughter, then at Marcus. Both of you taught me that. 6 months later, the Morrison Education Center opened in a renovated building downtown. 50 children enrolled. 3 full-time teachers hired, with Marcus as director. Elena served on the board, attending evening sessions twice weekly, often bringing Mia. On opening night, Elena stood with Marcus watching children explore the bright new classrooms. We did something real, she said quietly. We did, Marcus agreed. Then, with careful deliberation, he took her hand. Not as colleagues, but as something more. Something growing slowly, built on shared values and mutual respect. Elena squeezed his hand, letting herself feel hope she'd thought died with her husband. Not a replacement, but a new beginning. Different, but equally real. Mia noticed, of course. She smiled, saying nothing, simply happy to see her mother choosing life over mere survival, connection over isolation, love over fear. Some transformations happen suddenly. Others unfold gradually, taught by patient teachers who see potential others miss. Elena Morrison had built an empire, but Marcus Webb had taught her to build something better, a life with meaning, purpose, and the courage to value people over profit. The CEO and the janitor. Different worlds, converging on common ground, teaching each other that worth isn't determined by wealth or status, but by the choice to show up, to care, to fight for what matters. And in that convergence, everyone, children, families, even a lonely billionaire and a teacher who never stopped teaching, found what they've been searching for all along. Home. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.